Hello, welcome to the Great Northern Cascades Division in N-Scale. This is the third video now in a series where we're looking at JMRI, the Java Model Railroad Interface. And it's a computer application that lets us connect into our DCC system. I'm using Digitrax here on the layout, but it works just fine with NCE, ESU, Hornby, other systems that you might have. So in the first couple of videos, we looked at some of the different options on computers that you can use to run JMRI, and then we looked at how you can go ahead and download JMRI ready to run on a Raspberry Pi, which is a little mini computer. It's really cheap, and it's perfect for running something like JMRI where you don't want to have to deal with the computer stuff. In the second video, we then looked at connecting in the Digitrax command station via USB, configuring that so that it'll start running trends for us, and got us ready with a wireless network so that we can then start to use a smartphone so that we can now actually run some trends. So let's check out how it's going to work. Let's see how easy it is to then start running some trends off a phone. Thanks. All right, so this is JMRI that's running on the Raspberry Pi. This is what I've been looking at before, and so I got a comment from a friend about how my layout room looked a little bit too tidy. Now you'll get to see a little bit of behind the scenes, and this workbench is not that tidy. But little Raspberry Pi is now running. So this is JMRI, and then we've got a USB cable that's running all the way down to the DCS 210 Plus command station from Digitrax. And so there's a previous video on how I had first got Digitrax all set up. And if we come down underneath, there's the command station. And so in this previous video that we did with JMRI, we set up the DCS 210 Plus as a USB interface and configured it as a command station within JMRI. So that means that we can do some of the programming stuff. We can also run trends, we can change signals, routes, do all kinds of stuff. Okay, so no smoke and mirrors. There's the wireless handset for the Digitrax system. I'm not running that at the moment because everything now is going to be done through a smartphone. And if we come up, let's have a little bit of a look at what we're going to be running. All I have at the moment is just this one little test track. So this is actually an Empire Builder, as it would have been in about 1955, 17 cars. And we've got 4 F units. We're only going to be playing with the first 2 F units, the A and B units. So I'm going to switch over to my smartphone now, and we'll get to have a look and see what's actually running, how we connect to it, and how JMRI is then automatically giving us control of the whole layout as we would scale up without having to do anything with the Digitrax system.
Raspberry Pi is really just acting as a mini wireless network all by itself. There's nothing else that we can do. The Raspberry Pi isn't actually connected to my home Wi-Fi network. It's broadcasting its own Wi-Fi network. So my smartphone's now connected to the Raspberry Pi Wi-Fi network. I don't have internet access. I can't get email. I can't browse websites or anything like that. But what it means is when I open up something like Engine Driver, and I'm using an Android phone, so Engine Driver is what I'm using, it's saying, okay, I've discovered something. I've discovered the Great Northern Cascade Division. Do you want to connect to it? This is the JMRI instance that is running out on that little Raspberry Pi. And so what I'm able to do now is say, okay, I want to go ahead and now connect to a locomotive. So I've got that F7A unit, and it should be road number 4441. I want to go ahead and acquire that. And so what's kind of cool is it's already got some things for like light, and so we can see we can turn the light on and off. And what we can do is rather than just 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, these functions don't do anything with the decoder that I have. It's a very basic decoder. This unit doesn't have sound. But you can program these using JMRI and Decoder Pro so that they actually have text-based names rather than just numbers. That gets really important when it comes to sound functions. But what we can do, let's turn that light back on, and let's start to have that loco go off and move away. There it goes. And we can also then say, okay, now let's come into reverse. Let's bring that back. And now we want to go ahead and we want to stop that. Okay. And we'll move it forward. And we'll turn off its light. Now, what we can also do down on the bottom is we can say, okay, well now actually let's connect to the B unit. And there's no lights on this, but what I can do, you should be able to hear in the background that the sound's running. This is a sound equipped loco, and so I can do that. We can also then do things like turn the bell on. Or we could blow its horn. All right, and so again, there's a whole bunch of other functions that are programmed into the sound decoder. Rather than just having numbers which you can't remember, you can put text-based things in, again, using DCC Decoder Pro on JMRI. And that's one of the advantages of using something like this through a smartphone, or you can run it on a tablet. You can run this on an iPad. You can walk around your layout with a big screen, 9-inch touchscreen. Everything's labeled with words for what the decoder functions are, rather than having to try and remember those in your head and use numbers, and then you do that through the Digitrax hand control. So we're going to go ahead and release that loco. What we could also do is say, okay, well actually what I want to do is I want to now do 4442, and I want to create a consist together with them. And it's like, okay, is that correct? Is that what you want to do? Is it front? And it's just like, yes it is. Well, now I've got these two locos consisted. And so let's turn the light on, and what we should now be able to do is they will now move off together. Don't quite have speed matching done, but the two of them will then go off together by themselves. So let's stop that. Let's bring them into reverse. And now again, they're going to come back. Speed matching isn't quite there. I haven't done anything with these locos, but I've now done a consist. And if I want to, again, I can come back in and I can release it, go ahead. And now we're back to normal. And we can pick recent locos as well. Or if you have a server roster built up, which again we looked at in a previous video very briefly, JMRI lets you have a roster of locos or rolling stock. So your locos again can get put in and they can have names identified to them. So rather than having to say, okay, 4441, well I know best on the road number, this is 444A, so I called it 1. This was 444B, so it became 4442. Again, trying to map all of this in your head, especially if you have people visiting your layout, gets a little bit hard. And so if you set up the roster within JMRI, then it makes it a little bit easier to be able to see.
All right, so in some future videos that I'm going to do, I'm going to go a little bit more into DCC Decoder Pro. I think what we'll do is look at how we can do some of that function mapping. So where I was saying, okay, rather than having function 8 to start and stop the engine, rather than having function whatever to do the brakes or to do passenger announcements and things like that, you can have text that will show up. In a future video, we'll look at how we can use Decoder Pro through JMRI to be able to go ahead and make those changes so that when we select the locomotive, it gives us those text-based descriptions. I think a future video will also look into server rosters as well. So again, rather than having to remember the road number and put that in, what you'll be able to do is just visually see that roster, pick the loco that you want, off you go, you can start running it from a smartphone. Now again, this is all really basic. It's just a single test track and that's it, because obviously the layout is still under construction, but all of this scales up. So if you start out with some of the basics on some of the small stuff, don't think you have to put 100 locomotives into this. This is how you can start out small and you can kind of figure things out as you go along. So hopefully you've enjoyed this. Please do subscribe, like, and follow along so you can see these future videos where we get into some of that roster stuff, where we get into some of the DCC decoder programming, and hopefully you've enjoyed this one. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.